I'm just sending a message
oh.
to Ellie. Ellie, I started
Okay.
the restream. Hello, Facebook. Hello, YouTube. We'll be starting in a 2
You're
minutes.
on.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'll
You
say-
can continue talking. You can continue.
I was going to ask you where is Lauren? Where is she gone?
Lauren is on leave.
Permanent or
She's on
temporary?
leave. Temporary leave.
Oh,
Yeah.
she all right? Everything's good?
She's okay. Yeah.
Okay, good.
She's okay. Yeah. We're going to get started here in a minute. And hello, Facebook Live. How are you? We have Jack Watson here. We have Julia Parsons here. We also have Vic DiCarlo, who is still trying to connect, I think. Hi, Vic, if you could hear us. I think you need to join with internet audio. I think that's what you need, Vic. Join with internet audio if you could hear us. Could they usually hear us if they haven't joined with internet audio, Ellie?
Not always, no. So if you can't hear us, then, but sometimes you can.
Maybe I'll put him, should I put him back in the waiting room?
Sure, yeah.
That would help. And John.
How are you, Ellie? Are you home for a couple of days?
I am, yeah. I'm home back in Pittsburgh, and it's been really nice. And it's
Your
great
dad
to
will
see
be
everybody.
spoiled.
Yes.
I gave her the afternoon off and she's here anyhow.
I know. That's the nature of daughters.
Yeah, I think it's because she
Good to
doesn't
see
trust
you.
me to do it on my own. Well, how about this? Let's start letting people in and I'll start the music. How about that?
Sounds
Okay.
great.
Sounds good.
All right. Welcome to Greatest Generation Live. This is Todd. It is great to have you with us as always on this program here on Sunday, November 29th. This is a program of the Veterans Breakfast Club. We do this every Sunday afternoon until the end of the year. And today we are featuring World War II veteran Jack Watson, who is in the United States Marine Corps. He served in the 24th Regiment of the 4th Marine Division, and he served on Iwo Jima, and he's been kind enough to come on today and share his story. We also have Julia Parsons here. She was in the room before we got started. We were chatting a little bit. Hello, Julia.
Hi, everybody good?
Everybody's good.
Good.
Are you done eating turkey, Julia?
I am. I certainly am. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
I think I've had my fill of turkey for a while. Yeah, but I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. I love seeing some faces that I haven't seen in a long time. Is it Bob Rupert? Hey, Bob, how are you? Good to see you. Good to see you, Bob. And Ron Worstel. Ron, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Todd. You?
Good. I'm going to share something with our guests here that you shared with me. You sent this to me on Thanksgiving, and it made me thankful for the good meal that I had. So were you in Vietnam for Thanksgiving, Ron?
I was. Thanksgiving and Christmas. Yeah.
And do you remember much about it?
Well, we were told we were out in the field and that we would not be getting a turkey dinner. So they told us like in early part of May to start saving up our sea rations that had turkey loaf on it if we wanted to have turkey on Thanksgiving. So we all went through our weekly or daily rations of sea rations, and we saved those turkey loaf cans that we came across. It turned out we didn't have to. They finally conceded to send a couple of helicopters out and picked us up. They brought us into a fire support base where we had to cook dinner. And then about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they took us back out to the field.
Oh, gosh. Some Thanksgiving. How often did you get cooked dinners in Vietnam?
Almost never.
Almost never.
I would say 85% were sea rations.
Oh, boy. And how was the turkey loaf?
It was fine. It was fine. When you're hungry, you eat anything.
And I should say that Ron served in the 1st Division, the Big Red One, in Vietnam in 1968, 69?
68 and 69, right.
68 and 69. And how was Christmas then?
Christmas was not too bad. We were at a fire support base, artillery fire support base. And there was a ceasefire for like 2 days, which nobody believed anybody was going to keep. But we posted our guards at night and made sure everything was okay. And I remember like 1 o'clock in the morning being on guard on top of my bunker, nobody else awake, the darkest sky I think I've ever seen. And I had the hugest, biggest pity party for myself that I ever had. It was Christmas Eve and I wasn't home, and I just had a big pity party for myself.
Well, I guess, I mean, you deserved it. And
Todd, I have a question for Rod. When you are in a ceasefire situation, you obviously did not trust that.
No, we did not. No. But I don't know that it was ever violated. At least it wasn't violated anytime I was in an area. It was held. So we didn't have any sneak attacks or anything like that during Thanksgiving, Christmas, or Easter.
oh my.
Now, how was the decision made to declare a ceasefire?
You know, that was way above my pay grade.
Okay.
I think the
They
two
told
sides
you to
agreed to
enforce
that.
it,
You
they'll
know.
make a decision.
Yeah, we agreed to do a ceasefire during their Tet offensive or Tet celebration in January, February. So they counted by honoring our Thanksgiving and Christmas. That was the big deal with the Tet offensive of 1968. That was supposed to be a ceasefire.
Exactly. Yes, that's right. And that allowed the Viet Cong to infiltrate and the NBA to infiltrate and prepare for the uprising, the offensive.
That's the biggest holiday in Vietnam. It's a new year. And by tradition, everyone goes home to their home village, their hometown for New Year's. And it's not just like 2 days, it's like a week or 10 days. So there was a lot of travel, a lot of traffic on the roads, on the trains, people traveling back home to their homeland.
Ron, your parents are World War II veterans?
Yes, they are.
And did they kind of prepare you at all for Vietnam?
No, not really. No. Actually, my dad did not serve in World War II. He was deferred. He was a welder at DeVaux, and they were making the LSTs. So he was there before the draft started up. So they would not let him go because of that.
Okay.
But they worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Yes. And your mom?
My mom was just a homemaker at that time. She had a job in a grocery or a pharmacy in town.
And she's still with us, right?
She is. She's 104 and a half.
104 and a half.
Wow.
Oh my.
She'll be 105 in February.
Oh my gosh. Boy, oh boy. How terrific.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, Ron, thank you for joining us this afternoon for this program. Hey, Dan Vaughn, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk to Ron and tell him that I understand exactly what turkey loaf tastes like. And I only had 2 days worth of hot rations when we were relieved by the reserve platoon after we were in the bush for 3 months. And after the second day, we went out on that 8-day patrol. You have pictures of that, I believe, Todd.
Yep.
And after that, we went right back out in the field again. We only had 2 days worth of hot rations. After that, it was all sea rats with C4 to heat them up with.
We did the same thing. We didn't get those little heat tablets. Somebody in the back must have kept those. We never saw those guys.
Well, we got them. We got them with our sea rats every once in a while, but it never worked. We had engineers with us blowing up some tunnels, and I asked an engineer for a 2.5 pound block of C4, and he wanted to know what it was for.
Yep.
I told being a fire team leader, I says, I need it for my fire team for heating the sea ration. He said, that's good. Okay, that'll work.
You'd make a marble-sized roll of C4, and
Just
that
about-
would cook your meal for you, plenty.
Yep. Just about the size of a quarter, and that's all it took.
Yeah.
Isn't that great? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
It would
We
boil,
also,
it would
we would
boil
take-
water in about 15 seconds.
yeah, we would take, some of the sea rations had peanut butter in them, and we would open that up and take the toilet paper and soak up the oil from the peanuts. And then we'd light that on fire to heat up our rations.
Yeah, that C4 was incredible. It'd take about 15 or 20 seconds to boil water. It was incredible.
Yeah, you didn't want to step on it.
Yeah, no way. That's all I had to say.
Well, thank you, Dan, and thank you for uncovering your camera for once. I appreciate that. Say hi to Cheryl. Hey, Joe Chivers, I want to thank you for this. You dropped this off. This will become part of my decor here behind me. I'm going to put it right here. I'll fix it up. But I do want to let people know we have our happy hour tomorrow where we're going to continue this conversation about serving in Vietnam. Specifically, we're going to have two vets join us who, two vets join us who were part of a successful and unusual program in Vietnam. One was called the Mobile Advisory Team in the Army, and that was Jim Roberts. The other was called the Civilian, oh gosh, you'd think I'd know that, Combined Action Program, the Marine Corps Combined Action Program. And that was Bill Silver. And boy, do they have fascinating stories, because these programs, which were very similar, meant that they weren't out in the field like Ron Worstow or like Dan Vaughn with a platoon or a company on patrol. They were living in the villages with the Vietnamese. And their job was really kind of to work with the local Vietnamese, work with the local forces in trying to resist the Viet Cong and the NBA. And it's considered both of them are considered fairly successful programs that were discontinued. But they have fascinating stories, so they were very close to the Vietnamese. And I do hope that you'll join us tomorrow night at 7 for our VBC happy hour. And we'll have a lot of open conversation also. So please do join us for that if you can. And I also want to give the last call for our MRE dinner, which will be on Saturday, next Saturday, December 5th at 7 p.m. And anybody could join us. You don't have to order a dinner to join us. But if you do order a dinner, it's $40, and we will send you a delicious and a wonderful USMRE like this one. This is considered, I think, Ellie, is this your understanding too, that this is considered the best MRE?
Yeah, people say that the hash brown potatoes with peppers and onions is one of the best. Or at least you can't mess it up. Maybe that's it.
Yeah. Now, one of the best might be, I think the bar's kind of low is what I'm trying to say. So I think, I think this is one of the best. But then if you want to be a little bit more adventurous, other countries have excellent MREs. One of them is Japan. Here's a Japanese MRE, and this is, chicken and tomato stew. And then we have, of course, the Spanish MRE, and we have German MREs and Russian. And I think we only have Russian. Dana Del Bianco, who speaks Russian, has ordered, I think, the only Russian MRE. So that'll be $60 if you want a foreign MRE. And then we also have beer and wine, and that's another $10. We will deliver them all next week. Here is the wine. It's some white bubbly. And here is the beer, which is, I had to sample it to make sure it was okay. And man, is it good. It's called Good Vibrations IPA, West Coast IPA from Voodoo Brewery, a veteran-owned brewery. And this is Kill Pills. You'll get one of each. And man, are they good, although I think they're a little strong. But
Thanks, Todd, for taking one for the team.
I know. Hey, somebody had to do it, you know. Ellie was AWOL. I had to do it. Thank you, Ron, for that. I'm glad somebody appreciates that. And I do want to share, if you want to register for the dinner, you could do it on our Eventbrite page. and I will put it in the chat here. Ellie, I hope you will put it in the chat or in the comments on Facebook Live. And you can just click it and register. And of course, if you want to join us, it'll be on the Zoom channel at 7 p.m. on Saturday. We're going to have a beer and wine tasting at 6:30. So if you order the beer and wine, you could come to that too. Yeah, please do join us if you can. And I know Henry Shepke. Hello, Henry. You'll be joining us. Good to see you, Henry. This is Henry from Madison, Wisconsin, our 13-year-old student who has been coming to these events. And Henry, I know that you and I didn't go back and forth these past couple days about a question that you might have for our group here. But I don't know, do you have any question you want to ask the group of veterans we have?
What did they eat for Christmas while they were serving?
What did you eat for Christmas? That's a good question. Does anybody remember? Oh, I see Warren Goss laughing. Warren, I'm going to unmute you here for a second. How you doing, Warren? If you click unmute. You've got to click unmute, Warren, because we can't hear you. Last week, we heard about how Warren stole a turkey from a farmer in England, and a live turkey, and he was stopped by a British police officer. I'm not sure if he remembers a Christmas. Let's see. While you're working to unmute Warren, Bert Kennedy does not remember any Christmas dinner.
He's asking him.
Hey, Warren.
Are you talking to me, Todd?
I am.
Well, what do you want to know, buddy?
Henry asked the veterans if they remember what they ate on a Christmas in the military.
No, I don't. Most probably whatever you could get, C, D, or A, or X, B. I don't know, any damn thing. I don't remember nothing special.
Nothing special.
Nothing
special. All right. Nothing special. How about Julia Parsons? You were in the Navy. You ate well all the time. Did you have good?
Yes, I don't remember Christmas either. Any dinners. I worked all Christmases, 2 or 3 of them, but I don't remember the food being any different. It was good. Whatever it was good.
Well, you know what, Henry, we'll pose this. Let's pose this tomorrow night and see what we get. If you're going to be there, if you're going to be on our event tomorrow night, let's pose it again. Let's continue to pose it. And maybe you guys could freshen your memories a little bit and remember a dinner. So,
hey,
yeah.
Todd,
Yes.
about that turkey.
Yes.
You know, the way that happened, I was thinking about that. The guys were complaining about no turkey for Easter or Christmas or something. You know, this was in the brigade then. And then the farmers were having I don't know what they were having, but they're having something, a farm sale or something. And I went and stole the turkey and took it in and gave it to them. And I think they just gave it to the cook. I never got nothing of it.
But you didn't have any of it.
No, I didn't ever see no more of it. The only thing I had that turkey maybe a half hour.
When it was alive.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay, Warren, your stories are just so wonderful. Hey, Don, check. How are you?
I'm good.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Hey, Todd, real quick question. Did any of the veterans here see a USO Bob Hope holiday show while they were deployed? I know I had seen one in 71 or 72, I believe it was, when I was in Subic Bay in the Philippines. But I know he was so dedicated to the troops around the holiday season, and it was so well received. I was wondering if anyone else had an opportunity to see the Bob Hope USO Christmas shows.
Oh, but cheer, Mary.
Did you hear any of the Bob Hope Christmas shows when you were overseas?
No, I never heard none.
Yeah, Warren never had any fun. Military.
Never heard one.
No. Anybody? Hey, John Ferguson, did you?
I saw Bob Hope Christmas Eve, 1966 at Thompson Oaks. Rita Faria was Miss World, Phyllis Diller, Joey Heatherton, Les Brown. everybody was yelling, "Where's Jerry?" They were waiting for Jerry Colonna, but
Jerry
he was sick
Colonna,
and couldn't make the trip. And I think that was the first time that Dolores Hope was with Bob for a Christmas show for a lot of years.
I'm laughing, John, because you realize my 24-year-old daughter, Ellie here, doesn't know a single name that you said. The only reason she knows Bob Hope is just because she's heard veterans talk about Bob Hope. Jerry Colon, Phyllis Diller, Wes Brown. Was he the comedian with the rubber face? Was that somebody else?
I think that was Colonna, had the big mustache. Les Brown is band renowned. Les Brown was a band director.
Oh, he's a band director. Okay, I was thinking
Joey Heatherton
somebody
was
else.
there.
Joey Heatherton, Dan Vaughn.
Yeah, I never saw anyone like Bob Hope ran by. They never came out there. The only thing that I saw different than Marines were the Montagnards. We had worked with the Montagnards a couple of times, and they are great fighters. They really are good guys. And that was the only thing other than normal Marines that I had ever seen was Montagnards.
With Montagnards, who were in Vietnam, they were members of one of the 54 ethnic groups, non-Vietnamese ethnic groups who lived in the mountains.
Yeah,
and
terrible fighters.
yes, yeah, some of them were on the north side, some of them were on the U.S. side. Boy, yeah, when our trips to Vietnam, boy, just driving through those Montagnard villages, fascinating.
Well, they were like our Native American Indian. They were native to Vietnam before the Chinese moved in.
Exactly. And they weren't Vietnamese. They didn't speak Vietnamese. No. They spoke their own languages. They still do. Right. They have their own religions. I mean, they have their own culture and customs. You could absolutely tell when you're driving through a Montagnard today, one of these ethnic villages, that they're different from the other Vietnamese you see.
They were nomadic. They moved around.
What?
Fascinating. Hey, I want to also let you know that next week, a week from today, we will have this program on December 6th. And I thought it would be an interesting thing to do to have everybody who was around, who remembers Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, to come on the program and share their memories of that day. I'll give a little bit of history of the bombing of Pearl Harbor and what it entailed. But I would love to hear your memories. So if anybody could make it, if you're old enough to remember Pearl Harbor, or if you have some stories from Pearl Harbor, please do join us and share those stories next week. We'll send out an email reminder, but I just thought I'd give you a little prompt early on here. And Nick DeVaux, I don't think Nick is with us. I wanted him to give us an update on the logbook project, but I know that we do have Scott Masters. Hello, Scott. Good to see you. Good to meet you.
Nice to see you as well. Thanks for having me.
This is Scott Masters. He is a history teacher, a social studies teacher. He's a department head at a school in Toronto. Here, I'm going to give you his information here. He's at Crestwood Preparatory College, and he also directs a really fascinating oral history project. I've looked at this oral history project online, Scott, and I just cannot believe how extensive it is. And I'm going to share the website with people so they could check it out if they'd like to. Is this a project that you started or that you took over?
I started this about 15 years ago. I've been teaching now for 30 years, and I always was inviting World War II veterans to speak to my different classes. I happen to be a dual citizen, and I grew up in the United States, so I had the chance to meet quite a few American veterans. We also interviewed hundreds of Holocaust survivors in the course of doing this. And I decided at a certain point to make that the main project for the course. Every student would do an interview with somebody, and this was just a fantastic thing to do for years and years. Obviously, we've hit a little bit of a wall this year, and I've been, very pleasantly surprised that we've been able to start doing these interviews on Zoom. I actually just this morning took 10 students on Zoom, and we interviewed a merchant marine vet who lives up in northern Quebec, and it was just a fascinating conversation. He never saw Bob Hope, though.
He never saw Bob Hope. Oh, and I want to invite people to check it out. It's crestwood.on.ca, and you can navigate to the Oral History Project. I'll put the I'll put the URL in the chat here on the Zoom side. And you can see that the Oral History Project is their community members, Crestwood families, First Nations, so that'd be Native Americans, Holocaust survivors, and military veterans. And you got in contact with us because you're looking for World War II veterans to have your students interview, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We interview people from as many places as we can find. Obviously, we very much focus on Canadian veterans since that's where we're located. But I teach American history, and I'm really interested to learn stories from the United States. And we're lucky that Toronto is a big city that has everybody there. So we have spoken to German veterans and Russian veterans and people from just about every country involved. It's been really interesting. My own grandfathers were both veterans, so this is something that I grew up with. And I've noticed as I've been teaching, I started 30 years ago, all the students had grandparents who were veterans at that point. But here we are 30 years later, and they don't anymore. So I think it's really important to get the kids to make that connection with you guys wherever we can.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's something magical that happens when we get somebody like, Henry to join us. And then we have, older veterans who are here with us. I found that it's just a wonderful thing. It's good for those seniors, and it's good for the, younger people. Everybody gets something out of it. And I know that that you've connected with Julia Parsons, who's here on this Zoom call, and she's going to do an interview for you. Yep. And maybe I could twist a few arms here and get, say, Jack Watson and Jean Klebingot here, and Warren Goss, maybe to do interviews with you also. Is that what you're looking for?
I would absolutely love that. Anybody who wanted to meet, we're happy to do it. I'm lucky to have some fantastic students, and they have great questions. Just this morning, the vet we met with, he was born in 1924. And one of the students, unbeknownst to me, he was talking about his parents, and one of the students asked if his mother was a flapper, which I thought was just a great use of, applying what we're learning about in class.
That's terrific. That is so terrific. And I mean, if you wanted to have your students come on, any of our programs, would love to have them on also, because it's a great way to kind of meet and talk with the vets, and then also maybe even arrange to do then later a Zoom interview.
Yep, absolutely. That would be fantastic.
Thank you for joining us, Scott. I appreciate it. If you want to put your email in the chat here on the Zoom side, people could email you with questions or maybe names and contact information of World War II veterans who may be able to participate in your oral history project. I know Warren will be happy to do the interview, won't you, Warren? With Scott. No, he's shaking his head. No, he'll do it, Scott. Jean Klebingot also, he'll do it. So this is what a terrific thing. Thank you for joining us. And Nick DeVaux might join us also. I wanted him to connect with you because he knows a lot of World War II veterans also. But I thought, I want to welcome Vic DiCarlo. Hello, Vic. Good to see you. Let's see if we could say hi to Vic DiCarlo here. I'm going to rename him. He's another World War II veteran I could connect you with. Thank you for joining us, Vic. But I want to thank Jack Watson for joining us today. Jack is our special guest today. He has a special story. As you know, some of you have heard it before. This is your chance, though, to ask him some questions and interact with him. His daughter Sue is also with us. Hello, Sue. Jack, I've been wanting to have you come on and share your story, but I know it's hard for you, and I feel so bad asking you to do it because it's not a fun story. It's a painful story. When did you start talking about your experiences in the Pacific during World War II?
You got me started on that, Todd. You were here. I'm in a retirement community. And Todd was here one night giving a presentation. And he knew that I had been on Iwo. And after the program, he asked me, he said, would you be willing to talk about that? I said, no.
No.
And he said, but I'll help you with it. He said, I'll help you through it. So I agreed to do it. And to this day, it's been a blessing for me to begin talking about experiences, because there's no good hold up inside. They're better off talked about. So I thank Todd for opening my world for me.
Oh boy, Jack, I did not expect that answer. I know it's good to talk about things, but I remember that interview I did with you. It was probably the first time that I really doubted whether this was indeed good. I thought we should stop this. This is too hard. And you said, no, I want to keep going. And I'm so glad you did, because you gave this, I felt like you gave this gift to me and to everybody who's seen the interview of just a deep, intense, intimate, personal story of the kind of one of the toughest experiences you could go through. I want to share a picture of Jack. Jack, this is you after graduating boot camp, or is that when it was taken?
Yeah, that was taken probably at Jacksonville outside of Camp Lejeune. And that was obviously taken in his studio. I did not have dress blues. You weren't entitled to dress blues unless you were a shipboard. But that photo was taken in a photo shop in Jacksonville, North Carolina. And the coat was one size fits all. The coat was slit up the back, and they would fit that around you. At the back are all these elastic bands that they would tighten up and make that thing look like it belonged to you. The same is true of the hat. The hat was one size fits all. And in the back of it, if you could see the back of it, it was all elastics. So that's where that picture was taken. And I've kept it all these years. My daughter has kept it all these years. And if anybody ever wants and I have a young man up in Canada that his class would like pictures of me, and they sent that picture to me. They downloaded it, and they asked me to autograph that and send it back to them. I will do that, but I'm also going to send you some pictures of me in the real uniform of the Marine Corps, the dungarees.
Yes.
I mean, that was our everyday uniform. This was only for show. And I never wore one after that picture.
You never wore dress blues after this picture?
No.
Well, it's a great picture. How old are you? 18 years old in this picture, maybe?
I was probably 17 when that picture was taken.
Man, oh man. And we were talking, Jack, before we started. And I know that you came from a disrupted family life. Your mom died when you grew up in Morningside, neighborhood of Pittsburgh. Your mom died when you were 10 years old. Your dad, with 4 children, couldn't take care of them because he was on the road. You went to an orphanage in Latrobe, and it's a painful part of your story. But I made the observation that I know quite a few Marines, especially, but veterans generally, but Marines especially, who came from troubled family backgrounds and kind of find their second family, a family in the Marine Corps. They kind of find a home in the Marine Corps. And you said that was you.
Oh, it was. And if you have a choice, that's a pretty poor choice. I mean, frankly, for me, it was good. And I guess that's why I live and die by once a Marine, always a Marine. And absolutely. I really believe that.
Absolutely. But I'm guessing that that's what appealed to you about the Marines, the intensity of the experience, the intensity of the bond that you were going to have with your fellow Marines.
Oh, that definitely was part of it. That was a good part of it. I never thought Marine Corps when I was in high school, when I started high school. I didn't even know what the Marine Corps was, but I knew a couple of guys that had served in the Marine Corps, and I had a lot of respect for them. And I kind of took after them. One guy was the name of Vic Suki, and Vic was a China Marine. He had served in China in the Marine Corps. And it used to be in the early days of the Marine Corps, that was a badge of honor. If you had served time in China, well, Vic had served in China for 2 years. And I got to know him, and probably if there's one person that influenced me to go to the Marine Corps, it would have been Vic.
And you had, clearly you had leadership qualities. You were athletic. It seemed like a good fit for the kind of person you the kind of person you were at 17 and 18, I would say.
Yeah, I had leadership qualities, I think, from early on. Because once my mother died and we went to the orphanage, my dad would come up to see us every Sunday without fail. But during the week, it was my job to take care of the family.
Yeah.
And I guess that's forced leadership, but it was a good kind of for me to start on.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of responsibility for a 10-year-old boy, then, growing into your teens in an orphanage. I think you said you left for boot camp, Parris Island on December 7th, 1942, 1-year anniversary of Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, I did. That was a Monday that year. And I had enlisted a month prior to that. And they told me to be bed down at the post office on December 7th. Well, I had a cousin that was going in the Marine Corps, and he had the idea that if I delayed my time, we could leave together. I don't know why that would have been good, but he did. So I went down and I asked him to change my enlistment date. And I thought they did it. But then later on, I heard that the Marine Corps was stopping all enlistments. And that was not what I wanted. I wanted to enlist in the Marine Corps at that point. So I went down to the post office on a Monday, December 7th, and told them I had made a mistake, that I had changed my enlistment date. And they said, no, you didn't. It was never officially changed. You're due to leave tomorrow and be here tonight to be sworn in. So that was my introduction into the Marine Corps.
And
it was fast and furious.
Fast and furious. And your arrival on Parris Island was like the arrival of generations before and after you, I imagine, where you get yelled at and, pushed around, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. What the hell did I do?
Right. And do you think you were well trained in your 12 weeks at Parris Island? I mean, were you prepared for what you were going to have to endure?
Oh, yeah, very much so. In fact, I think recently we had a drill sergeant who was a platoon leader. And he had been in the Marine Corps at that point, probably 15 years. And he was tough. He made us work. And I remember one time he said, the things that you learn here in boot camp someday are going to save your life. And he was right.
He was right.
Yeah, he was absolutely right.
Man.
I mean, I used boot camp techniques in combat that amazed me.
Like what?
Well, hand-to-hand combat. We actually trained for that under this Sergeant Pugh. He challenged us to take on other Marines in our boot platoon, and we would duke it out. And that's exactly what I faced when I got to Iwo. It was hand-to-hand combat, only this time it was not another Marine, it was a Japanese soldier.
Oh my. Oh my. And after Camp Lejeune, I'm sorry, after Paris Island, you went to Camp Lejeune for, was it radio school?
Yeah, we went to, because the 4th Marine Division at that point was just being formed. The 24th Regiment had already been activated. They were out the West Coast. The 23rd Division, Regiment was being formed in Camp Lejeune. So most of my boot platoon went to the 23rd Regiment. And I was assigned to go to radio operator school. And I guess something in my pre-enlistment testing, or maybe boot camp testing, indicated that I had capabilities that would lend themselves very well to code. So I went to radio operator school, I think for 12 weeks. And that was boring as hell. I mean, you sat in a classroom all day long with headphones on, listening to the dots and dashes. And every once in a while, they would send a code that said test. And you had to test out, I think, at 15 words a minute. I ended up, I could do 18 words a minute. But that was the introduction to radio for me. And I thought when I came out of that radio operator school, I thought I'll just return to my boot platoon in the 23rd Regiment as a radio operator. Well, I came out of that camp and they said, no, you're going to Chicago. I said, what am I going to Chicago for? Because you've been identified as somebody who has capability of learning electronics. So we spent a month in Chicago, and that was more to test your math skills than anything else. And after Chicago, which was one month, we went on to, there's the electronic training program right there.
That's it. If people want to read about it, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jack, but if people want to read about it, it's very interesting. It was
I just saw that recently.
Yeah, it was not easy to get into. It was highly selective. You were clearly tested and selected for this program.
Oh, yeah.
You were given, it was a college level education.
Yes,
that you were given. And very rigorous. You know, you had to score very high. I'm going to put the link if anybody wants to follow up on it. You had to score high on the, aptitude tests that you were given. You clearly had scored high on those. They figured you will make a great, radar operator, maintenance person, technician. But that's not what you wanted.
Yeah. Well, there was a good side to that too, because as a radar technician, you were declared non-combat eligible, which meant you could not be put into combat because you had too much knowledge that would be valuable to the Marine Corps, not necessarily to the Japanese, but to the Marine Corps. So you were combat free. When I finished that course, I ultimately ended up at Treasure Island in California. And went on from there to Camp Pendleton. to form a unit that was going to replace casualties in the 4th Marine Division. And it was while I was at Camp Pendleton that we received notice that we were no longer classified as combat free because the Marine Corps had no radar. So why was I trained in radar if the Marine Corps didn't have any? Well, I think their ultimate deal was they were hoping at that time, and I think still now today, submarine duty is strictly confident or strictly volunteer. And they were hoping that some Marines would volunteer to join the submarines and be their radar technician. I did not want to do that. I wanted back in the Marine Corps. So we went to Camp Pendleton, and that's where I was advised that you're no longer a radar technician. You're now combat eligible, and you're going to join the 4th Division at Maui. So
Boy,
pardon me?
I was just going to say, I don't think there's ever been a Marine ever who wanted to serve on a submarine. Am I right? I mean, that's
no, I don't know of any. I do not know of any.
That's not what you joined the Marine Corps.
I had been on one submarine prior to that.
Oh, you had?
That was enough for me to know I did not want to be on a submarine. And not only that, I didn't want to be the Marine on a submarine that had the responsibility for the radar technology. So, but that training stood me well in all my life, in my business life.
Really, the education that you got, do you mean in the electronics training program served you well later in life?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Really?
Because I think I got my first job, which was with Minneapolis Honeywell, strictly because I had that training in the service. And they were looking for people who had technical training. And I, by all means, had technical training. But I never had to use it. I ended up, after we finished up on Iwo Jima, I came back and our base camp was on Maui in the Hawaiians. And I came back and my job was to repair certain radios, anything that was mobile, anything that was in a tank, a Jeep, or a truck was my responsibility to repair that. And so I ended up doing a lot of repair work on combat equipment. So I came to know combat equipment pretty well.
Boy, did you, I love this, Jack. Thank you for sharing so much. I think we're really establishing, I'm a writer. You want to establish character when you write about something. And I think everybody, our viewers and our participants, are beginning to get an idea of your character as somebody who came from a traumatic family breakup background, who was very bright, natural leader, had taken on a lot of responsibility as a young age, wanted to be a gung-ho Marine, and yet you kept getting picked on because you were so smart to do these, special projects, and that's not what you wanted. In fact, you told me that you tried, and Sue just put this in the chat here. Thank you, Sue, for reminding me. You tried to flunk out of radar school, and the commander wouldn't let you.
No, he told me, he said, do that again. He said, you're going back to school. He said, because your records indicate that you should be able to learn this stuff. He said, you flunk out again and you're going to go to court-martial. That means brig time, dishonorable discharge. And that was too high a price. So I went back to school and bit the bullet, I guess.
Do you want to ask something?
Isn't that, yeah. Do we have any questions here? Dan, hi, Dan. Vaughn.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to tell you, Jack, thank you so much for your story. It was incredible. You're one tough ass Marine. Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.
You ain't heard nothing yet, Dan.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
his life was tough. It really was.
It was a tough life, and like, and he's somebody who kind of has it all. You know, had it all. He had the brains, the courage, you know, the drive, the motivation, the ambition, and here's the I'm, you know, Dan Vaughn, I'm a king of the stupid questions. Here's a stupid question for you, Jack. What did you do to try to flunk out?
I just didn't do the work. Okay. I mean, we had homework to do. We were tested continually. And I flunked every test they gave me. Not because I didn't know it, but because I wanted to get out of there. Well, they fooled me. They put me back in and said, don't flunk out again. I counted the other day. I think in my time in the Marine Corps, I had 5 incidents what were court-martial offenses. Most of them were just a disobedience. And I survived all of those. Don't ask me why. They've stood me well. And I've often remembered that in my professional life and my life as a father, that it's possible to not want to do what you're doing. And that is acceptable.
So you named one. Can you give us another instance of where you committed a potentially court-martialable offense?
Well, the first one was, again, in the first part of that training program, radar training. I went to Chicago first, and from Chicago, I went to Grove City. And my home at that point was in Pittsburgh. So Grove City was like in the backyard, you know, so why wouldn't I want to go to Grove City? So there were 2 Watsons in that class in Chicago. And one was a Navy and I was the other one. The assignments came out on the last day of school. And I was selected to go to Oklahoma. And this other guy who was from Oklahoma was selected to go to Grove City. So I had the bright idea that nobody will ever know. You go to Oklahoma, I'll go to Grove City, and nobody will ever know. Well, they did know about a month later, and by then it was too late.
Oh
I had already been into the courses at Grove City, and they said, well, that's a court-martial offense, but you're excused. The other one, the other incident at Grove City, I was a PFC when I was in Grove City. And in the Marine Corps, I think the Army's the same way, maybe the Navy, I don't know. The guy with the highest rank in the gathering was in charge. So when I was a PFC, most of the other guys were privates, and I was one pay grade above them. So I was put in charge of this platoon at Grove City. Well, what happened when we had guards on the doors. Now, don't ask me why at a college like Grove City, we needed Marine Corps guards at the doors, but they said we had Marine Corps guards. Some guys in the platoon got happy one night and started throwing water balloons. They weren't really water balloons, but they were similar.
Okay, I think we get the picture.
At the guards. So the guard, of course, turned him in. And we had a captain that was in charge of the unit. And I went to the captain, and the captain made the decision that nobody was to have liberty because of this incident. Well, I thought that was unfair to punish the whole platoon for the actions of 2 or 3 guys. So I went to those guys and I said, here's the deal. If I go to the captain and I have a conversation with him and he agrees to drop the court martial and maybe do kitchen duty, KP, they said that would be fine. So I went to the captain the next day and told him I knew and I had permission from the guys that were involved to turn them in. Do you want their names? And he said, I do. So I gave him the names. He court-martialed those guys. They went to the brig for 7 days because he didn't like what they did. He thought that was against him. I was so angry at him because my word was mud. My life was mud back at the barracks. So I went into the captain's office the next day and I didn't knock at the door. He had a secretary. I just walked right by her, walked into her office. And I said, you son of a...
You did not.
Yes, I did. And this was to a captain in the Marine Corps. And he was patient enough to listen to my story. I said, you completely ruined my command. I have no respect in that platoon anymore. And he said, well, I'll reverse the decision. I said, you better. I said, because if not, you're going to have a revolt on your hands. Now, that was a court-martial offense. 1, to tell a captain what I called him, and 2, to insist that he change his plans. So that was 2 of my instances of possible court-martial occurred while I was at Grove City. The other ones were later on and kind of incidental.
We'll get to that. No, Sue, you make sure I remember to ask him about that later on. Carol Popchalk, part of the fun of doing this program is to see the reactions of people like Carol as you share the story. Oh my gosh, did you have guts, Jack? You were kind of, you thought you would get away with not going to Oklahoma and going to Grove City and switching the names? Jeez.
I wasn't too smart that way.
And to go into to be a PFC and to tell off a captain like that. Oh my. Well, that is really, that's another little wrinkle here in the character development. I'm guessing that the Marine Corps, by 1944 is just like the Army in Europe is running out of men. They don't need a lot of technicians and fancy training and radar technicians on submarines. They need Marines who could pull that trigger and be on amphibious invasions. And so you were turned into a combat replacement Marine for the 24th Marines, 24th Marine Regiment.
24th Regiment.
And did you sail from California then to Maui?
Yeah, we had been assigned when we finished at Treasure Island, we went down to Camp Pendleton. And that's where the 24th Replacement Platoon was being formed. The 4th Division had fought on Roy Namur, Saipan, and Tinian, and were preparing for Iwo Jima. We were to go there as a replacement because their losses were heavy at the first 3 battles, and they needed replacements. That was us. So we went as a replacement unit to the 4th Division. We trained separately. We were in a separate tented area, but we went on maneuvers with them, and we trained for Iwo Jima, but we went to Iwo Jima with the idea that there was no way we would ever participate in the battle because Iwo Jima at that point was supposed to last 3 days. And they figured, in fact, the entire fourth, or two regiments of the 4th Marine Division were in reserve at Iwo initially. And the invasion was really made by the 5th Division and the 2 regiments of the 4th Division, not the 24th. And when we finished that invasion, that's when we became part of the 4th Division. In fact, as soon as we landed on the 2nd day of Iwo Jima, as soon as we landed on the beach, they started taking replacements out of my command and putting them into active duty with the 24th Regiment. Things like flamethrowers, machine gunners, medical people, and these were all prime targets for the Japanese. Right. Anybody that was a medic was picked off pretty soon, or at least shot at. They never carried weapons. They carried Band-Aids and sulfa and medicines, but they never carried a weapon, the medics. And they were remarkable people. And I befriended 2 of them that were in my replacement battalion, or platoon. And at one point on Iwo, I ended up with a broken nose. My nose was completely turned to the side. And I ran into one of the corpsman friends down on the beach. And he said, "What happened to you?" And I said, "I don't know. I think I have a broken nose." Well, he took his hands, and this is common procedure now. They just put their hands on your nose and twist it, and it snaps back into place. So that was my only injury on Iwo Jima, was a broken nose. And I don't even know how it happened. It happened in hand-to-hand combat, but I don't know what part of that my nose received a blow.
Jack, I remember you said that, well, you said you did your training on Maui. And I remember when I first interviewed you, and I very naively asked you, "Oh, Maui, was that nice?" And you said no.
Well, it wasn't.
It wasn't a vacation.
No, it was not my wife and I have gone back there since. And we stayed at a lovely motel and or hotel down on the beach where we used to do maneuvers in preparation for Iwo Jima. It was on one side of the island. It was desolate, with very little activity over there at all. And that's where we got our training for Iwo Jima. Was on the Maui side.
Henry Shupke, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jack, made a great point to me in a message here on the Zoom side. You should have gotten a Purple Heart for that broken nose, just so you know. He thinks it's funny, Henry, but it's true. Should have gotten a Purple Heart for the broken nose. I'll ask you the same what I asked you about boot camp. Was the training on Maui good? Did you feel it prepared you as much as it could for combat on Iwo Jima?
Oh, yeah, we were prepared. I never doubted that. Most of the guys in that platoon never doubted that. They knew they were ready, but they didn't expect to go. They never expected, none of us, in fact, I used to tell them, we're on for the ride. We're going to ride to Iwo Jima. We're going to watch them battle. And then we're going back to Maui. Yeah. Well, that didn't work out to be the truth. First of all, because there's our team assessment we went to. That's the ship we took to from Maui to Iwo Jima, the AKA 21.
And this was you were on board the ship when you finally learned that you were going to Iwo Jima.
Well, yeah, we had left Pearl Harbor, and we had a huge convoy because the 5th Division was training in the island of Hawaii, and we were, of course, at Maui. The 2 divisions joined together at Pearl Harbor, and from there we sailed for Iwo, but we didn't know where we were going. I'm sure some people in the command knew, but I just sure didn't have any knowledge. So on the way to Iwo, we stopped at Saipan for our final maneuvers.
Yeah.
And we did, as replacements, we did not participate in the practice landings at Saipan. We just stayed on board ship because we were not supposed to be part of the invasion.
Boy, so they were that confident that the bombardment, the naval bombardment of Iwo Jima, which is a small island, 2 miles by 4 miles, something like that, that the bombardment was going to pretty much destroy any enemy resistance on the island, and that it'll be an easy 3-day operation, and you won't even get in on the fight, right?
Well, yeah, that was the idea. And the 24th Regiment in total was in reserve at Iwo. So I had a lieutenant that was in charge of my unit. His name was Luker. And Lieutenant Luker came to me one day, the second day of Iwo Jima, maybe the first, and said they're experiencing losses very much higher than what they expected. In all probability, the 24th Regiment is going to join the invasion. And if they go, we will go. So he said, I'll keep you posted. Well, this was about noontime of D-Day. And about 6 o'clock, Luker came to me and he said, guess what? We're going in as soon as they can get landing craft here for us. So they brought landing craft aside the ship. We went down the rope ladder, which is a thrill like you never had before. Although we had practiced it in boot camp, we had practiced rope landings. But you never think you're going to use that training. And so when on the way to Iwo, there were 2 divisions in this convoy, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 4th. As we were near Saipan, we were told that there would be maneuvers, the final practice landings would be made on Saipan. But that we would in turn not participate in that as replacements. So we just watched the whole thing from on board ship. We watched it. It was after we left Iwo, and we made those stops after that. Iwo Jima was probably 700 miles, I don't know. It was after we left Saipan that we were told where we were going and what the target was. And we were shown maps of this island. And the Suribachi was at this end. This is Suribachi, the mountain. The landings were all made from this beach. And the 5th Division would end on this part of the beach. That's why they took Suribachi and actually raised a flag on Suribachi. The 4th Marine Division, 2 regiments of the 4th, landed abreast of them. And that was a total invasion on D-Day. Then we progressed from there. You know, you see pictures of that sandy beach. Well, that's this area up in here. This is an airfield. There were 3 airfields. number 1, number 2, and number 3 was up at the northern end. And that had barely been started. And that today is the airport that they use for all visitors. But anyhow, this is where we made the landing on this beach here. And the 4th Division, and when I came in, this is where we landed. And this part of the beach was, it kind of looks at there, was literally a beach. It was black sand, but it was sandy. But it was almost impossible to walk through. You certainly couldn't dig foxholes in it. I think this has, I don't know if that's Suribachi or an island off the.
Yeah, that's Suribachi.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, the landings were made, the 5th Division went in right here. The 4th Division went into this cove up here. And the airports were up on the hill above this. The pictures you see, and all this green was not there then. That was all black sand.
Right.
It was a horrible looking place. And this is why our Iwo Jima was so difficult, because the Japanese had emplacements all through that mountain. And their plan was to allow the invasion parties to get on the beach, because the original landing parties, and even when we went in, we had no fire. Nobody opposed us going in there, because their plan was to let us get on the beaches and then open fire. And that's exactly what they did. That's why losses were so very heavy in those first few days, because they were putting us off like.
You were on board the Artemis, Jack, when the first wave went in, and I think you told me that you were watching them through binoculars.
Yeah, I watched the first wave go in from onboard ship, that Artemis. I happened to be radar technician that went through school. The school I went through was a friend of mine from Pittsburgh. I didn't know him before that, but I met him at Treasure Island. And he ended up, when we got on this troop transport at Maui, Dick was the radar or the radio technician on board the ship. He was in charge of all their equipment. And so he saw me stand on the deck, on the dock, and he yelled at me, "Hey, Watson." And I looked up and there he's up there waving to him. So that was good from one standpoint. During the trip from Maui to Iwo Jima, the accommodations were not that good. There weren't hotel rooms, or there weren't decent heads or anything else. And Dick had a Radio Shack back on the fantail of that ship. And I decided the place for me was not to go down into the hold where it was bunk beds 5, 6 high. And as a sergeant at that point, I got my choice. So I could either take top bunk or lower bunk. Well, I elected to take lower bunk because that was easier to get to the head, the bathroom,
right
from there. So, but anyhow, I ended up sleeping on Dick's workbench in his Radio Shack. That was much more comfortable for me to sleep on his workbench than it was to go down into the hold and sleep on a bunk and have people peeing on you all night, whatever they wanted to do. It was not a good existence.
No. Yeah, I've heard that one of the reasons they make it so uncomfortable for you on those ships is so that you're eager to get out and and land on those beaches.
We'd have gone any place, just tell us where to get off.
Right. And what is your memory of finally getting off and climbing down the rope ladder, the cargo net, getting into the landing craft, and then landing on that beach?
Not good, really. I was scared to death because I'd never been in charge of a platoon going into combat. There's no way they can really train you for that. That's just something that happens, and you're there, and that's your job, and that's what you do. So I realized it was up to me to get these guys ready to go in. And I talked to them as a group. I talked to them as individuals. And this was all in about 3 or 4 hours from the time we found out that we were going in until they did bring small boats alongside. And then you go down these ladders, and they're literally rope ladders that they throw over the side of the ship. When you're trying to get on that thing, you've got a big pack on your back. I had an M1. Most guys had an M1 with them. You had a bandolier of ammunition. I had 3 of them. You had a belt full of hand grenades. So you had a lot of gear you were taking down that rope ladder. You're getting down that ladder, and the ship itself is rolling in the ocean and going up and down. The small boat is just doing the opposite, it seemed to me. When the big boat was going up, the little one was going down. And we had to get from one to the other. He ended up probably the last 10 yards, he just jumped into the small boat. Before that, before we left the Artemis, they had us assemble on deck. And one of the routines you always used for an assembly, you would report whether your platoon or your unit was all ready and accounted for. And I had to report that to the captain. Oh, he was a colonel. We were reporting to a colonel at that point.
Jack, you've mentioned hand-to-hand combat already, and I know that was probably the toughest part of your experience on Iwo Jima. And I thought I would share with our participants and our viewers here a wonderful picture that a young Charlie Greer sent to you. Charlie was born in the U.S. in Minnesota. He lives in Great Britain. He was 10 years old a couple years ago, and he watched your interview online that we have on our Veterans Breakfast Club website, and he drew this picture and sent it to you with this note. "Hey, Jack," and notice the correct grammar with the comma after "hey. I finished watching and taking notes on your interview. In this small picture I drew, it shows when you heard the Japanese soldier behind you and then turned around and walked away peacefully. I do hope you enjoy it, sir. Huge regards, Charlie." And you could see Jack's broken nose is depicted right here with the crooked nose. I love that detail. Do you care to share that story?
Well, what happened, Charlie did contact me and another friend of mine, but he was bored because I had seen combat. The other Marine had not seen any combat. So Charlie was very much interested in. And I told him, and I've told Todd the story about the one time I was in hand-to-hand combat. This is not very good. We had been trained how to fight in hand-to-hand combat, but you can train all you want until you're there and doing it. It's a whole new ball game. And we were in hand-to-hand combat, and I think Todd asked me people have asked me how many people were involved in that. I don't know. I know there were probably 4 or 5 of us and the equal number of Japanese, but I don't really know. I could be off by a dozen people. I don't know. But anyhow, that was a very fierce fight. And it was literally hand to hand. I had killed one Japanese with a bayonet. And it's what would be the end of that battle. And I have no idea how long this lasted. It could have lasted 10 minutes. It could have lasted 5 minutes. It could have been an hour. I don't really remember. All I knew is I had to fight and I was scared to death. And I was trying to protect the others who were with me. So at one point, we had obviously defeated the Japanese that were there. And I don't know how you leave a site like that. There's no organized way to do it. There's nothing in the book that tells you when you finish hand to hand, this is the way you leave the site. There's nothing that tells you that. But anyhow, I started to walk away from that site. And I became aware of somebody being behind me at my back. And I knew it wasn't one of our guys. And I turned around and looked, it was a Japanese soldier. And the thing that bothered me, he had an M1 rifle, which means that he took it away from one of the Marines that he had killed. That infuriated me. I looked at that man, and at that time, I had absolutely nothing left in me.
Hello?
I was completely exhausted.
Sorry.
And I turned to that Japanese soldier, and I looked him in the eye, and he looked me in the eye. And we didn't say a word to each other. We could not if we would wanted to, because I'm sure I didn't know Japanese. I'm sure he did not know English. But anyhow, we looked at each other, and our eyes met, and we just turned and walked away from each other, back to back. That was my exit from that first hand-to-hand combat. Mm. Who that man was, I have no idea. But I think if I told Todd, if I ever saw him, I think I would know him.
Boy, oh boy.
And I think he would know me.
It's hard to imagine that he survived that battle.
Well, hand-to-hand became kind of the standard of battle for a couple of days there until we got like halfway up the island. I never had hand-to-hand combat beyond the beach area, the airport area. I was probably in hand-to-hand 2 or 3 times, I don't remember. But it's one of those things that it just won't go away.
I like to invite people, if they have questions or comments, to please just let us know. Hi, Carol. Thank you.
I'm so moved by your story. And I want you to know that there was a fellow Western Pennsylvanian on Iwo Jima with you that never was able to talk about it and his experiences. My uncle and godfather, Bob Smith from Uniontown, he volunteered for the Marine Corps in June of 42. And he was at Roy Namor, Saipan, Tinian, and finally Iwo Jima. And after Iwo Jima was sent stateside to prepare for the invasion of Japan.
Yeah.
On the 75th anniversary of Iwo Jima, I sent his 3 children a little commemorative of Iwo Jima. And his oldest son, his namesake, my cousin Bob, told me, I know nothing of my father's war experience. I asked him questions. He would never talk about it. He would never tell us anything. And as some of you know, my late husband did oral history interviews with all of the family members who were World War II veterans. So I do have the interview with my Uncle Bob. He opened up to my husband and told my husband things in a formal interview that he would never tell anybody else. And I found among my husband's things this document. I guess it's a history of the 4th Marine Division.
Yeah.
My uncle was a tanker. He was with, let's see, he says it's the 4th Tank Battalion from the 4th Marine Division, Jack. And I'll tell you one funny story. He never missed a reunion. He dragged my Aunt Georgette, whom her nickname was Brad for Omar Bradley. He called her the General. But he dragged her to every reunion. And one of the last reunions, he got in a tank, and it took a Marine division to get him back out again. It was a little bit dicey about getting him back out of the tank. But I sent my cousin Bob a copy of that history of the 4th Marine Division that was written in 1946, and got the most heartfelt letter from my cousin that now he's starting to understand what his dad went through, and was very grateful to have the documentation that told him step by step what his dad had experienced. So I applaud your decision to talk about it. And what you shared with us today is phenomenal. And I'll never forget it.
Thank you, Carol. Yeah, and the courage that it takes.
As I said in the beginning, I thank Todd, because until I met Todd and he convinced me that it would be good for me to tell that story, I never would talk about it. My wife knew very little about what I just talked about. Mm-hmm. She did all of it, but our children, I don't think knew much about that story until Todd got me to talk about it. So I thank Todd for releasing me for helping to release me from terrible memories. And they won't go away.
I mean, it's so easy to see why you wouldn't want to talk about it. How do you even begin to explain it? How do you begin to talk about it without people kind of being afraid of you? I mean, to be intimidated by you, you said several times when we first started talking about it, it's like it wasn't me on Iwo Jima. It was like it was somebody doing things that like I was, I was kind of like a marionette. What you're explaining is a kind of a disassociation that I think is a very natural and very common response to a traumatic experience, the kind of separation from yourself. And how do you even begin to explain that to somebody? No wonder you didn't talk about it.
Well, I guess that's the salvation in, you do learn to get away from it, disassociate with it.
Yeah.
That's what you helped me do. That's what you helped me with, Todd. And I thank you every day for that.
Jack, you shared this story that I think is just so moving about this bayonet and about your bayonet. And you were, I guess it was on St. Patrick's Day, I believe, March 17th, 1945, your last day on Iwo Jima. You were about to get onto a transport, to get onto a ship to go back to Hawaii. And you were sitting there on the beach cleaning a bayonet.
Well, that's the bayonet that I have with me now. And this is the scabbard for it. That was issued to me at boot camp. The bayonet I left on Iwo Jima because it had not good memories. And the day we were leaving, which was March 17th, we were down on the beach. We were waiting for small boats to take us out to troop transports. And my bayonet was filthy. I had killed at least one Japanese with it. It wasn't a good looking, it wasn't something I wanted to bring back as a souvenir in any case. So I was trying to clean it off. And by cleaning it off, I would jab it into the sand. And that was so abrasive, it did take some of the gook off it. But at one point, I just stuck it in the sand and I left it there. And to my knowledge, it's still there. I'm sure not, because somebody's picked it up as a souvenir, I'm sure. But the bayonet that I had been issued and carried on to Iwo, I did not want to bring back with me. I knew that. So I left that bayonet there. And so it would always be in uniform. You always had a bayonet with you. Well, equipment was pretty easy to come by because it was equipment from dead Marines all over that island. So I picked up another bayonet, and that's that bayonet that you see there. That's the one I brought back with me. It was virtually clean because it had not been used in the way I used it.
And that was your first step, I think, of healing.
Oh, yeah.
Leaving that bayonet there. You had the right instinct, I think. Oh boy, I want to show another picture of you, and it's of you, I believe, after Iwo. And I look at this picture, Jack, because, you know, you're smiling, you're with a friend. I guess is it back on Maui?
Yeah, we're back on Maui at this point. And this was a good friend of mine, N.J. Burris, who was from New Jersey. And we had probably been playing handball because he and I played handball a lot. But that was in the background there. I don't think you can see them in that picture. There are a lot of tents. That's what we lived in. We lived in these tents, 5 men to a tent. But as a sergeant, I raided my own tent. But I eventually moved my buddy Rod Watt in with me. But that was, I don't even know why that, I don't know who took that picture, but that was obviously, I looked at this picture right here on that picture, there's a bump. I have no idea what that is. I didn't know I had it until I looked at that picture. It's not a wound. And that's the other thing that I can always be thankful for on Iwo Jima. I had a lot of close calls, but I was never injured.
Amazing. And you were here when this picture was taken, Jack. You were training for the invasion of Japan, which you were sure was going to come.
Oh, yeah.
I can't imagine after what you had been through on Iwo Jima that you must have known that, you know, your luck was going to run out at that invasion of Japan.
Well, we were pretty much told that. Whereas Iwo Jima, when we left Camp Maui to head to Iwo Jima, we had no idea where we were going. But when we came back and began training, we knew and were told what we were training for. We were going to be the leaders in the invasion of Japan. We were going to be the first Marine unit to step on that island or that territory. So we knew what we were training for. But it didn't seem to bother anybody until Harry Truman dropped the bomb on Hiroshima. And that meant the end of the war. All that meant for us, we did immediately cease all training because we were training to be killed. We were told that there will be very few survivors from our invasion of Japan. And with the 4th Division taking the lead, your chances are pretty slim. So if you survive the Iwo Jima, count your blessings, but look forward to Japan because that's where we're going next. So we knew what we were training for.
Oh my. Jack, thank you so much. I want to ask if anybody else has a question or a comment. Mary here says, my grandfather was on a ship headed to Japan. When we dropped the bomb, we were expecting 500,000 American casualties had we gone to Japan. Yeah, the World War II veterans here are here because they didn't have to be in on the invasion of Japan. Vic DiCarlo, hi Vic, Warren Goss, Gene Klebengott, all here because of that. Does anybody else have any questions for Jack? Yes, Don Nemchek.
Jack, God bless you. Jack, when you come back to the States, did they give you any type of decompression time or any type of advice from doctors or medical people, psychologists, as to what you have gone through to adjust yourself into civilian life?
No, but hindsight tells me that I wish they had.
Yeah.
Because I had no particular problem. I came back to the States. Somehow I was able to put Iwo Jima particularly behind me. I never talked about it to anybody, so it was just one of those things. It was a buried truth that would probably take a grave. And my kids never knew about it until years later. It's never easy to talk about.
No, it isn't. And that's why, Jack, we're so grateful that you're willing to do it. I mean, I understand now better the courage that you have, just hearing more about your story. But it takes a lot of courage to share this painful story that you've shared with us today. Your daughter, Mary, did you want to say something? Hi, Mary. You have to, if you could click unmute, Mary Goss. There you go. Hello, Mary.
Hi. I just wanted to say I have a comment to make to Jack. What he has told is a story of good versus evil. And I believe in all my heart that God always saves a remnant to tell his story of good versus evil. And when we fight evil, it's never a pretty picture. But remember, God has given you a long life so that you could tell his story in your life. And I appreciate and I thank God for your life to tell us this story. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Hey, Jack. I would like to know what year you was up in Grove City.
That would have been 44, 43 and 44.
Yeah, okay.
I left Grove City and went to the West Coast to Treasure Island. And we got there someplace in like November, I think, of 1944.
Yeah, and 44 is when I was over in Europe. And Jack, your story was very inspiring. And I understand when you say you never told nobody, and I can understand it. And all I can say is God bless you, my friend. God bless you.
Thank you, Warren. Oh, boy. Sue, as Jack's daughter, I know that you didn't know much growing up about his story. And you must have known, that your dad had suffered something during the war, but not quite sure probably what it was. How old were you when you did finally kind of hear at least the basic contours of his story?
We heard the heroic, saw the Marine Corps blanket when we went to the beach, and the story that he didn't tell was about the hand grenade. We saw that and saw those artifacts and just thought they were cool. But it wasn't. I taught for years, and I had the kids do a thing on Veterans Day. And one of the things that he would always come, I would write a little tribute to him. And then the kids, I'd invite him back to my class and allow the kids to ask him questions. And, I had already prompted them about, you don't say, was it cool to kill or whatever. They were sixth graders.
Right.
But one of the questions that someone asked, it was a sort of an innocent question, and I was on the other side of the room, was, what do you remember most? And I looked at him and just saw all the blood drain from his face. And his lips started to quiver, and it seemed like the other side of the room was 100 yards away as I was trying to get to him. And he uttered, just so I could hear it, the stench. And that was the turning point in me realizing that it wasn't a movie, but it was a real thing that, he carried with him. One of the things I was going to say is that people who know my dad but don't know his service would describe him as probably one of the most humanitarian people. Just in his service in his early on, what he did to help race relations and the volunteerism he did in Homewood, to coach young men, in basketball and softball and just some of those kind of things. But looking back, that was probably all, attempts to heal and attempts to humanize, some of the enemy. And one of the things he just said recently that I hadn't heard, it was related to a story that I'm probably telling too much. When he was at St. X, when he was at the orphanage, he was going to run away and got, as far as the next little town. And he said he realized then that love was greater than life, and that his siblings were back in the orphanage. And, as much as he was going through there, he was not treated well at that orphanage. But he knew he had to go back because love was greater than his life. And, he probably was 12 or 13 at the time. But, I think you hit it on the head when you talk about his leadership, character starting way before that. And, I think even knowing, I don't think he honestly realized how poorly he was treated until later in life, because love is greater than life in his mind. And he, knew he had to take care. He had to keep his chin up and, in honor of his mother who had passed away and, to honor his father who entrusted him. He just did it. So I love you, Dad.
What character? I mean, it's character, character growing up and character is what got you through this experience at Iwo Jima. But then there's another quality that Sue mentioned, and that is you healed. You really have. I mean, you may not think that you have because, it still is painful, but the pain doesn't go away necessarily. But the life that you've led and the fact that you're able to share this wisdom with us and that you've raised a family, that's like two different kinds of character, Jack, that you had. I mean, one to lead men in battle and another is to recover from the trauma of war. Those are two different things. Some war heroes never do heal. You're a hero twice, in war and then what you've done since. And I just feel privileged to have heard your story. I owe you also. If we're able to get together again, Jack, I don't know if you still drink beer, but I'll buy you a beer.
Oh, I still drink beer. Yeah.
All right.
Show me a Marine that doesn't drink beer.
That's great. Oh, wow. Well, Jack, I cannot thank you enough. I'll never have the words to thank you for sharing the story that you did with us this afternoon. And I know nobody who's been on this Zoom call or watching on Facebook will ever forget the story. Thank you. Thanks to all of you for joining us, for asking the questions,
Thank you, Todd.
for giving a real hero your time and attention. Scott, thank you for joining us from Toronto. And I look forward to seeing all of you, hopefully again. Gene Klebingot, thank you for joining us from Naples, Florida. And I look forward to seeing you all again, hopefully tomorrow night at 7 p.m. for our Veterans Breakfast Club happy hour, where we'll be talking with Bill Silver and Jim Roberts, Vietnam veterans who have stories to share. And Bob Rupert, I would love to see you on that too. We're going to talk about Vietnam. All right, guys, thank you for everything. Hope to see you again. Take care. Bye-bye.